Welcome to the East of England showground, where a really packed crowd is looking forward to one of the major events of the National League Speedway calendar. It's the semi-finals and final of the National League 4-team tournament. And three local sides, that's the home team Peterborough, Rye House and Mildenhall, are among the 8 teams battling it out. Well, the format is quite straightforward. 4 teams in each semi-final, 4 riders plus a reserve in each team. They fight it out over 8 heats, with the top 2 finishers going through to the final. And this is the first semi-final lineup. Mildenhall and Rye House up against Exeter, and an Oxford side who may be bottom of the league but have been transformed in recent weeks by the signing of the former Mildenhall man Ian Gledhill. The second semi-final, equally intriguing. Ellesmere Port, they won the title in 1979, Newcastle won in 1976, and Peterborough have won it twice in 1977 and 78.
We join the first semi-final in Heat 2, Mildenhall having won the first heat ahead of Rye House. Commentator Dave Lanning.
Heat 2 brings an interesting character into our picture. Can't recall seeing him before on our angling coverage. This is Graham Drury from Oxford, who had a season in the West German Bundesliga back in 1980, formerly with Hull. A very experienced campaigner from the Welsh border country. He's on the inside in white. Next to him, Richard Knight, Mildenhall. And remember, the Fen Tigers in front at this stage. Grid 3 has Bob Coles now with Exeter, but of course a Mildenhall rider during the early days down there at West Row. And on the outside, former Ipswich junior now with Rye House, Steve Bryden. Here we go, Heat 2. Like Coles, and it looks like Drury in front with Knight flourishing briefly, trying to move through the second place. So that's the way they peel off down the back straight. Graham Drury leads it for Oxford. Second place is Richard Knight. In third place is Bob Coles, and Bryden at the back. Knight is a body battler for Mildenhall, going around the outside of Drury. He picked his moment to perfection there. And the Fen Tigers in full cry early on in this National Team 4 Championship. Knight, 22 years old, comes from Cambridge, just down the road on loan to Wimbledon. Has been part of the Mildenhall setup since 1978 and a member of the 1979 Championship winning side. Into the last lap. Remember, it's 347 metres around, and Richard Knight took his moment beautifully well on the first lap to move to the front. He leads it and wins it. 3 points to him, 2 for Drury and Oxford, 1 for Exeter. No score for Rye House, and so Mildenhall establishing early authority. And let's have a look at that moment when Richard Knight chose to move up front in Heat 2. You can see Graham Drury really is creeping around the line there, leaving an awful lot of room for the Mildenhall Tiger. He saw his gap, he took his opportunity, and from then on it was 3 points all the way. There's the score after 2 heats of the first semi-final. Mildenhall stretching their lead now 6 points. They haven't been beaten yet. Oxford moving into second place, Rye House back in third, and Exeter with just 1 point to show.
On now to Heat 5, Mildenhall way ahead, but a great battle for second place between Rye House and Oxford.
As we look across the grid lineup, Bobby Garrett from Rye House on the inside, he'll be in blue. Next to him, Dave Brewer, Exeter, yellow and black. Ray Bell's race winner, first time out for the Fen Tigers in grid 3. Colin Ackroyd coming into the fray for the first time. The backdrop of this new pavilion here at the East of England showground makes a colourful setting for heat number 5. And oh, what a flyer from Garrett on the inside. Garrett leads it. Second place is Bells, and third place is Ackroyd. That really was some start from Bobby Garrett. And this lad, when he gets in front, he gets his head down and his tail up, and he goes. Spectacular, crouching, old-time style of speedway. But Bobby Garrett, who of course has been with the then Silver regime at Hackney and Rye House all his career, it looks like he could open up Rye House's account as a race winner. It would be useful to them because they're 3 points behind Oxford at this stage. Ackroyd making no impression at all, and Brewer's a mile back for Exeter. They're just facing out here in this first semi-final. Of course, it's early days yet, and we envisage an awful lot of fine racing to come before we know the winners of this national team tournament. The last 2 corners, Garrett is going to win, and that's going to do Rye House no harm at all. He wins at second place. Bales, third was Colin Ackroyd. And so now, it's another quick won heat number 5. That's brought Rye House up to within a point of Oxford. Mildenhall with a comfortable second place there from Ray Bell, still in the lead with 13 points. Then we have Oxford with 7, Rye House on 6, Exeter back on 4. Guess what's the rider on the inside? Bobby Garrett, his start. He stood absolutely still. That really was a textbook start from him, because there was no semblance of a move from him. He has his nose in front. He's in complete control. He smells fresh air. He can make his own line. And it was just a question of how long before he hit the checkered flag from that point on. Just 2 heats to go in this first semi-final, which, if it maybe has not exactly set us alight with the standard of the spectacle, has been fairly interesting from the closeness of scoring. Let's just remind you that Mildenhall, after a very flying start, now have 13 points, and the pack is closing on them, because now we have Rye House on 9 points, followed by Oxford on 8, and Exeter by no means out of contention for a qualification place on 6. And these last 2 races are going to be crucial. We look across the grid in Heat 7. On the inside, Bob Cole from Exeter, veteran and nobody's fool. Grid 2, Colin Ackroyd, Oxford. Grid 3, Derek Harrison, who won his opening ride for Fen Tigers. And on the outside, the always competitive Kelvin Malarkey from Rye House, who had his usual flat-wing second place first time out. Here we go, Heat 7. And again from the outside it looks good, although it is Coles who gets to the corner first. Malarkey's gone by him, so too has Derek Harrison. And this is pretty fair speedway. Malarkey leads it for Rye House. Second place Harrison. Third is Coles. At the back is Ackroyd, and Ackroyd's coming into the action as well now. And I think Ackroyd's just got round into third place. We'll just see them know. It is Coles who holds him out, but not for long. So Bob Coles from Exeter, who was the first to show, has gone from first to last. And that really is indicative of the quality of the racing here. And now Ackroyd again is attacking Harrison as Malarkey leads. You can see the battle for the top placings. Around 2 lengths, 3 lengths between Malarkey and Harrison. And Ackroyd, who's going out of the dirt to try and find some extra drive. He is being dropped now, though, as they move into the last lap. After their stupendous start in this semi-final, the Fen Tigers, well, maybe they are easing up. Certainly Rye House, this is Rye's third victory on the trot for the Lee Valley Club. Malarkey wins in second place, Harrison third was Ackroyd. Malarkey, as always, playing to the gallery. Let's just have a look at what that race result does to the overall picture with just 1 heat of this first semi-final to go. We now have Mildenhall leading with 15 points, Rye House closing on 12, Oxford on 9, and Exeter back on 6. We'll have a look at that first lap again, because it's notable that the rider first away, he's on the inside, Bob Coles, although it's a pretty even break. The inside line proved decisive for Coles. Now, Coles has definitely got his nose in front. We've watched first for Malarkey around the outside. There goes Kelvin Malarkey. Harrison sees the gap and follows him round the outside. And Coles has dropped back into third place. And Harrison almost runs into the back wheel of Malarkey there, has to back off. And look at Colin Ackroyd, because he knows that Coles is vulnerable on the outside. He's gone out where the dirt is, and as they peel under us here in our commentary position, there's Malarkey still going strong up front. And Ackroyd again chooses the line on the outside where the dirt and the drive is, and he goes round Bob Coles, and poor old Bob, the ignominy of going from first to last in a little over a lap. So we come into the last heat of this first semi-final. There is Steve Naylor, who Rye House hope will anchor their hopes. And we do have a late change for Exeter. It's Mark Reeve coming into the yellow and black helmet colour, replacing Dave Brewer. We'll just see him in a moment. In the meantime, we revert back to Naylor. And providing Steve Naylor can do something here, Rye House will go forward with Mildenhall. Mildenhall, who made their big effort early on, should be sufficient to carry them through. They're on 15 points. Rye House are on 12. Oxford have Graham Drury, and if Drury can win heat number 8 and Naylor can't get a point, then it will make life interesting, and it would mean we would have a runoff for the second qualification place. So that really is the logistics of this last heat of the first semi-final. Heat 8 on the inside, we have Naylor from Rye House. Next to him, Rob Henry, Mildenhall. Grid 3, Graham Drury, Oxford on the outside, Mark Reeve. What a time to come into the action for this young man. Here we go for heat number 8. And it is Naylor who hits the corner first. Second place is Drury, third is Henry, and there goes Drury, and he's moved around the outside of Steve Naylor, as though the Rye House lad had got the chain. But it might not be good enough for Oxford. Drury's in front. Naylor's second, third is Rob Henry from Mildenhall, and Naylor is not giving up, and we have a battle developing here between these two. Drury in the white helmet colour, remember. Naylor in the blue helmet colour, trying the inside run, and here into the picture comes Rob Henry, and this is a little bit more like it. Drury in front, Naylor second, Henry trying the outside run, and Rob Henry has got round, or has he? No. Oh, that was a bit merciless. No room at all. Look at this for Speedway. Oh, and Henry is almost out in amongst the sheep pens there. Still Drury hangs on. Naylor's in second place. Henry still buzzing and battling. They're on the last lap. And although Drury could win this one, his effort might be too late for Oxford. And here we go again. And they're all around the big line, and Rob Henry's almost overcooked it. And in fact, he's let the third place rider, that was Mark Reeve, come through. It was a win for Drury. Second place was Naylor. Third place, right on the line, was Mark Reeve. There is the winner, who withstood all kinds of aggression and pressure from all kinds of different directions. That's Graham Drury. But for all that race win by Drury, not enough for Oxford. They finish on 12 points. The two qualifications going to Mildenhall with 15 points, Rye House with 14. Oxford finish on 12, Exeter on 7.
Robert Henry of Mildenhall, we must be absolutely delighted with the start to the afternoon's proceedings.
Yeah, very pleased. We've had the last few days we've had a bit of bad luck with away trips, but we were looking forward to this one, and to win the group is tremendous. We're really pleased.
And in that last heat, no indication from you that you wanted to relax?
No, well, I say a bit of bad luck. I've had quite a bit of bad luck just recently, and although we qualified, I'd like to just give a bit more for myself. Just a bit of bad luck, really.
Now you can take a few minutes, relax and watch the second semi-final, which looks quite intriguing. Ellesmere Port, Newcastle, Middlesbrough and the home team Peterborough.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't like to try and pick one actually out of that. Peterborough have won the title here 2 years, and the way the rest of the teams are going, there's no one to pick really. Just the first race and then see who's going from there.
And here is the lineup for that second semi-final. Looks absolutely fascinating. Ellesmere Port, the home team Peterborough, and Newcastle, they've all won the title before, and Middlesbrough, they're the reigning National League champions.
So away we go with heat number 1. It's a restart after John Jackson has taken a flyer at the tapes. Commentator Dave Lanning.
Let's have a look again at the lineup on the inside. John Jackson, Ellesmere Port, who really was the rider who caused that to be an unsatisfactory first start. Next to him, Bobby Beaton, Newcastle, sprint 3, and behind Peterborough. On the outside, Steve Wilcock, Middlesbrough, and again Jackson's impatient. And this time it is a clear break, and Jackson has been left having reared a little. And in front it is Bobby Beaton with Andy Hines going around the outside of him, and Beaton showing his experience. He leads it for Newcastle. Second place is Hines, who really almost had John Jackson's front wheel off, and coming hard around the outside it's Steve Wilcock. So Beaton, who really many people felt was too good to drop International League Speedway with the closure of Hull last year, showing all his dash and experience and roaring away with Heat 1. Second place Hines, third place Jackson, and Steve Wilcock, the National League champion, spectator to field. Wilcock is making ground on Jackson. Here's Bobby Beaton, son of the promoter at Glasgow Speedway, coach driver, his own coaching business. Scottish bandstand of Wembley all the time, drives to coach himself. Here's Beaton winning Heat 1. Second place is Andy Hines, third John Jackson. And Wilcock we lost, having made a fair effort to get up and get a point. So Newcastle, a tough time siders move into an early lead. While the picture tells its own story here at Peterborough, what looked like being a superb summer's afternoon has now turned into duck country weather, the rain sheeting down. And this is bound to make a difference to track conditions and may well infect the progress of the meeting. At the moment we're still going strong with Heat 2 coming into the picture. And on the inside it will be Dave Allen for Peterborough, the local lad. Next to him Rob Maxfield, an Australian with Ellesmere Port. Grid 3 has Jeff Pusey. a veteran campaigner with Middlesbrough, and on the outside a very fast starting Australian called Rod Hunter from Newcastle. So heat 2 in the rain, it's going to be a bit slippery out there. And it is Hunter from the outside and Allen from the inside who makes a break, and Hunter has almost gone through the fence and he picked up some drive. Dave Allen leads it for Peterborough. Second place is Hunter. Third is Rob Maxfield, and Hunter's gone around the outside of Allen there, and although the rain has come down pretty heavily, it doesn't really seem to have slowed racing down very much. First place, and Allen is right up on the inside of Hunter, who can ill afford to make any mistake. Third place, and he's lost his helmet from Maxfield. All walks the crowd getting behind their man here. Old Newcastle in front with Hunter. And now Allen trying the outside run, and Allen moving out with the dirt is a perfect piece of overtaking. He really did pick his moment beautifully. And the Alwalton crowd will enjoy that. Over the line, Dave Allen wins it for Peterborough. Second place Hunter, third was Maxfield, and at the back it was Newson for Middlesbrough. So the home side are making the big guns Newcastle sweat a bit.
And the pressure continued. After 4 heats, Newcastle and Peterborough were together on 8 points each. On now to heat number 5.
Mick Hines in white, he'll be on grid 4 here. Next to him will be John Jackson from Ellesmere Port in red. Coming into the picture, Joe Owen from Newcastle. Won't be happy with his opening ride. Only 1 point. And in yellow and black, also a newcomer from Middlesbrough, Martin Dixon. So there's the lineup for heat 5 on the inside. Owen next to him, Dixon, Middlesbrough. Grid 3, Jackson, Ellesmere Port on the outside. Mick Hines, Peterborough. Heat number 5. Shows in front, Mick Hines is second, although Dixon will come under him. Dixon in second place, Mick Hines being squeezed out at the first corner. Last is John Jackson. And now, here comes Dixon, Martin Dixon around the outside of Joe Owen, trying to find a hole there, and squeezed out by the experienced Newcastle rider. Joe Owen leads it, second place Dixon, third is Hines. And at the back is John Jackson, and well, that is rather a disappointment for the Cheshire Club. And now Owen in front, familiar start with the elbows sticking up a mile. Martin Dixon, a tall lad from Hartlepool, one up there in the northeast. He's getting a bit of senior experience with Halifax. He's going to be quite a prospect, this lad. Making sure Joe Owen doesn't go to sleep up front. They're moving to the last lap. There is the battle, and Dixon really is battling. And if he could just get his wheels back in line, he might just get past Owen. Having battle here. He switches inside, and let's just see who has the run up to the line. And it looked just like Owen by about half a tyre width. Dixon was second, in third place it was Mick Hines. Martin Dixon, this lanky lad from the northeast, certainly didn't give up trying here. This is the last lap, Owen in front. And one always felt that Dixon, if he could just find a little extra something, could have gone by. And on the last corner, Owen just runs slightly past the corner. And Dixon swings back now. He does really turn quickly as Owen drifts. And as they level out, it was just really a question of who found the better line. Owen, touch of the Peter Cravens there on the outside. It looked like Dixon at this stage, but Owen just gets the drop here. As they go over the line, you'll see, what is it? Half a wheel maybe. Well, the second semi-final score now looking as though it might just develop into a 2-horse race. Newcastle on 11 points, that's no surprise. Peterborough on 9, still in touch. Ellesmere Port and Middlesbrough, who've been taking points off each other, now slipping a bit. Both 5 points, and both now 4 behind second place club Peterborough. Alan Emerson, a very big money buy, £10,000. I think that's still a record in National League circles, from Birmingham. He lives in Appleby, and he's a heat leader of considerable calibre for the Diamonds. And he's in the blue helmet colour here. So let's just have a look at the lineup for Heat 6, with Newcastle and Peterborough beginning to battle up front and beginning to lose the other two. Mike Spink on the inside, Middlesbrough. Next to him, Ian Barney. didn't look over impressive in his opening ride in white. Grid 3, we'll have Alan Emerson from Newcastle in his opening tussle of this national team fours, and on the outside, Ellesmere Port introduced referee Eric Monaghan, local discovery up there at the Cheshire track. So heat 6. Look for Emerson to see if he can maintain Newcastle's dominance. Here we go, heat 6. Emerson has made the jump. He has indeed on the inside of his Spink though from Middlesbrough. That was a good corner from the Tiger. He is now in front in yellow and black. Mike Spink leads Emerson is second. In third place, there's a battle going on between Monaghan and Barney. And we've got two distinct battles here. Look at them all there. Oh, what a fabulous picture. And he and Barney almost sneaked up the inside of everybody there. Well, that really was a fabulous piece of speedway action. Here comes Barney again on the inside of Emerson. In front with his Spink. And the local man is setting the kind of line here. Ian Barney's gone past Alan Emerson. So he's battled his way from last to second, and we wonder if he's got the legs now to get up and challenge Mike Spink. He just might. To the last lap, 347 metres more to go. And again, Barney, who does really move inside with devastating effect on that pit corner into the last two corners. Can he possibly catch Spink? Oh, he's in trouble. He's hit the fence with a wallop. Oh, that was a nasty one. And that really was caused just by trying too hard. So, the results of heat 6, a win for Mike Spink in yellow and black. Second eventually was Alan Emerson. Third was Eric Monaghan. And we look down there at poor old Ian Barney. Well, let's look at it again, and we'll see it just really was a question of over-enthusiasm from Ian Barney that caused that little prang. Spink's in front, unaware that he's got a dive bomber on his tail. And you can see that, just picked up the drive, and really should have let go. But he held on and hit the fence with a nasty wallop, and the bike came back and gave him a bit of a welt. And it's an untidy heap. And, well, Ian Barney can count himself lucky he walked away from that one.
Well, things got worse for Peterborough. They also failed to score in Heat 7, so as we move on to Heat 8, Middlesbrough have come into contention, level with Peterborough on 8 points.
Let's look at the lineup. Emerson on the inside from Newcastle. Next to him, Eric Monaghan, Ellesmere Port. Dave Allen, such a gallant race winner first time out, and Martin Dixon, who is no mug on the outside from Middlesbrough. The crowd here, obviously, will be looking for Allen. It's getting a little tight and tense down there on the start line. The starts have proved to be important, but we've equally well seen that it is possible to pass inside and out here on this very well prepared Peterborough circuit. So thousands of Peterborough fans hold their breath here and hope that Allen can get clear. If he doesn't, it could well be a dogfight in there. Again, on the inside, Emerson from Newcastle in blue. Next to him, Monaghan, Ellesmere Port. Grid 3, Allen on the outside. Dixon from Middlesbrough. Heat 8 to sort it all out. And all Allen's in trouble at the start. It's a very bad start. He snaked and reared, and that's allowed Eric Monaghan to go in front. In second place, it's Emerson. And coming round the outside, it is Martin Dixon. And this is bad news for Peterborough, and Allen has got a lot of ground to make up. And Dixon roaring around the outside. He's moved in front. Allen has moved into second place. But Allen has got back again. He seems to have got up into second place. He certainly was in third, but it's Monaghan from Ellesmere Port in second place. Dixon leads it, and Emerson is out of the picture. It doesn't really matter for Newcastle. What the vital point for Peterborough is that Dave Allen's back in third place, and he surely isn't going to catch Martin Dixon now. And that will be enough to take Middlesbrough, who made a pretty sluggish start, through into the final. Into the last lap, the Peterborough fans watching their amount of stunned silence. And the Middlesbrough fans, there's a few of them, and they're jumping around all over the place in front of us as Martin Dixon takes them through. He wins it. Second place was Monaghan. A brave ride from the Ellesmere Port Reserve. Allen never really recovered from that disastrous start, although it did look as though he might just get up and threaten. Well, let's watch the start and just watch the rider in white, Dave Allen, because he's left a bit there, and then he's in all kinds, did well to hang on really, all kinds of trouble, but it did allow the riders in red and blue, Monaghan and Emerson, to go clear. But Dixon then came into the picture in no mean manner. Just watch Dixon now, he's last here, and he moves up round Allen, around Emerson. Here he goes, and now he has got Monaghan in his sights, and he's round the outside. Now, whoever said that Speedway's all about getting out of the gate first, because there we saw a rider come from last to first in less than 347 metres, and that was overtaking at its very best and worthy of winning a place in this national team's final. Well, we knew it was going to be tight, and it turned out exactly like that. Newcastle, no real trouble for them. They win it on 16 points. Middlesbrough snatched it at the last gap, the qualification place on 12. Peterborough and Ellesmere Park just a couple of points behind them on 10 apiece. So the final will be Newcastle and Middlesbrough from the second semi-final, Rye House and Mildenhall from the first.
Welcome back to the Alwalton Stadium in Peterborough and the final of the National League 14 tournament. Well, the local crowd here a little bit disappointed to see the exit of Peterborough in the second semi-final, but still a tremendous amount of local interest in the final, with Rye House and Mildenhall lining up against Middlesbrough and Newcastle. Mildenhall won their semi-final in confident fashion, leading from the first heat. Rye House got through by a 2-point margin in second place. Middlesbrough rather crept through in the last heat of the second semi-final, which was won in really dominant fashion by Newcastle, who've looked the most powerful team so far. The commentator once again, Dave Lanning.
So Newcastle, very much the class side with the record in this tournament. Let's look at the lineup for Heat 1. On the inside, it's going to be Ray Bell's Mildenhall. Next to him in blue will be Kelvin Malarkey of Rye House. Grid 3 has Rod Hunter of Newcastle on the outside, Steve Wilcock of Middlesbrough. Here we go, Heat 1 of the final, and the outside grids, is it the show? Yes, it is Hunter in front, Hunter and Bells, and coming hard around the outside, it is Wilcock of Middlesbrough in third place, but Hunter again, this very, very fast starting Australian from Newcastle, really spearheading their attack as Wilcock moves into second place. So it is the Northerners leading the Anglins at the moment, and Hunter now has Wilcock right on his back wheel, and this Yorkshireman will battle and will drive and will push and will try to find something extra to just catch up as they come round here into lap 3. There's daylight between them, but not very much. There's Wilcock again, and we have seen the fighting qualities of Middlesbrough, the league champions. They're proud champions. And Wilcock has not just quite got the drive. He's trying the inside. No, when he's trying to swing outside, it has dried up after that early rain. This has been a tight opening race, but Hunter has not made a mistake, and he just has to navigate these last two corners to give Newcastle the start they were looking for. Does so. He wins it. Second place Wilcock. Third was Bells. And Newcastle, the form horse, looking every bit the bookmakers' favourites at this moment. Heat 2. And Newcastle, the favourites, maybe have their Achilles heel here. Maybe that's being unfair to the lad, but Alan Emerson only 2 points in the semi-final, a second to the last. Heat 2 has Richard Knight on the red helmet colour. Now he's in grid 2. On the inside, it's going to be Emerson from Newcastle, then Knight from Mildenhall, who had 3 points and an engine failure from the semi-finals. In the blue helmet colour on the outside, that's Steve Bryanton from Rye House, who didn't have a very happy semi-final yet to score. And in grid 3, it is Chris Pusey in yellow and black for Middlesbrough. So Newcastle and Middlesbrough showing them the way home in Heat 1. Let's see what happens in Heat 2. And again, Emerson gets away from the inside for Middlesbrough. And so too does Knight. And Knight has crept around the curve there. Has some crafty old cornering from the Mildenhall lad. He's in front. Knight leads in second place Emerson. Third is Pusey. And at the back it is Bryanton from Rye House, but East Anglians in the crowd now getting on their toes because Knight is under pressure from Emerson after a really cunning piece of first cornering on the first lap there. He crept around the curve and found some drive from somewhere, and he is kicking on in no mean fashion now. Closing on Richard Knight, and the experience this lad has gained at Wimbledon in the British League really is showing him. He looks a far more polished performer and certainly a greater track tactician than in previous seasons. This is Knight going to win it for Mildenhall. Second is Emerson. Third there on the line was Pusey. Milden Hall up within a point of Newcastle. Newcastle now on 5, Milden Hall on 4, Middlesbrough on 3. So getting a bit tight at the top. Well, here's an interesting character in the Middlesbrough corner of the pitch. This is Rob Wolfenden, recent signing from Scunthorpe in the Tigers lineup, who is famous for his hats, as you can see. And the Tigers up there say that when he gets his first maximum, there's going to be a ritual burning of that black monstrosity he's got on his head.
Anyway, it's hats off to Newcastle at the moment. They took a maximum from Heat 3, leaving Milden Hall and Middlesbrough level, 3 points adrift on 5 each.
Heat 4, Newcastle 3 in front of rivals Middlesbrough and Milden Hall, with Ryehouse yet to score. The lineup for this fourth race: on the inside again, we have this jet-propelled starter from Australia, Rod Hunter from Queensland. He's on the inside in the white helmet colour. Heat 4 then on the inside, the fast-starting Rod Hunter. Next to him in blue, Steve Bryant and Ryehouse. Grid 3 has Mike Spink, and on the outside it's Rob Henry from Milden Hall. Here we go. Heat 4 will watch for Hunter. He gets away like lightning, and he's done it again, and swung out to mid-track, and Spink's moved inside him. That was some brave cornering. Around the outside has come Henry. We know he loves to have a double, so it is now as they peel off into the top corner. Here comes Henry around the outside of Hunter. I don't think he's going to do it this time. Hunter leads. Second, it is Henry. Third is Spink and Bryant at the back. Henry does seem to find an awful lot of pace out there where the dirt is. Hunter is looking again a class performer up front. Australians, of course, with such a tradition of fast starters. Riders who don't make many mistakes when they get in front. Henry, we all know, will have a go, and Henry, bless his heart, is ducking and diving and trying to go inside or outside, and Hunter is slowing. There's no question Hunter is slowing. He looks in some trouble mechanically, and around him goes Henry, and I think following him will be Spink, and there was no question there's some mechanical trouble there for Rod Hunter. That's bad luck. I think it might be a puncher actually, and he might not hold on for third place. And over the line first, it was Henry. Second place was Spink. Hunter just held on there, but that's made a difference to the leaderboard. It is definitely a puncher that slowed up Rod Hunter. We can see that now. He won't be very happy about that. But the points he dropped there means that Newcastle are now only 1 point clear of Milden Hall. Well, this is Heat 5 coming up, and here possibly is Newcastle's match winner, because it's Bobby Beaton, and he is unbeaten thus far. In the semi-final he had two most emphatic race wins, and he is the only unbeaten rider on the card this afternoon. Heat 5 then, on the inside it will be Bob Garrett from Ryehouse in blue. Next to him Martin Dixon, Middlesbrough, and he's a bundle of dynamite as well, as we saw when he clinched that win in the last race of the second semi-final. Grid 3 has Ray Bells, and on the outside Bobby Beaton. Here we go for Heat 5. And Beaton's been left, so we'll see what he does now. He normally comes around the field. He's in last place. He's gone round Garrett. He's up into third place. And going down to the inside of Dixon is Bells, who leads it for Milden Hall. And Beaton is in third place and just really couldn't time his move after that terrible start. Ray Bells, using his experience to good use, leading it for Milden Hall. And this could open things up a bit, because Beaton, who looked incomparable in his semi, is way back in third place and gaining nothing. Dixon chasing hard after Bells there. But Ray Bells, he gets a rush of blood, takes a fair bit of catching. Hasn't made a mistake yet. And Dixon, we saw try and keep going. I'm sure he'll do that before that. He just cannot seem to get up to maybe disconcert Bells up front. And Bells is going away now. And that's a useful win for Milden Hall. Over the line, Ray Bells wins it. Second place is Dixon. Third is Beaton. There's a surprise. Garrett out of touch for Ryehouse. And what a difference that's made to the scoring, because Milden Hall have now moved in front on 11 points. Newcastle on 10. Middlesbrough on 9. And we have a final really building up to quite a climax. The penultimate race of this National Team 4 Championship, with Mildenhall and Newcastle locked together on 13 points, so every race now a cup final. Let's look at the lineup. On the inside, it is Jeff Pusey from Middlesbrough. Next to him, we have Bobby Beaton from Newcastle, Derek Harrison from Mildenhall, the local bespectacled lad from West Row, so much resting on his shoulders for East Anglian hopes. And on the outside, a rare spoiler in Kelvin Malarkey from Rye House. Effectively, it's a two-horse race, but there are some shop merchants in here. Here's heat number 7. Beaton is awfully impatient to go, and he's rocking backwards and forwards, and the referee is having none of it. He waits till he's still, and has he got away? I don't think he has. As they hit the corner, it is Harrison who just shows him. Beaton's in second place, and they're under pressure from Malarkey, and Kelvin Malarkey's gone by. This is good news for Anglian Speedway, because it's Harrison who leads it for the Fen Tigers. Malarkey, we thought he might just get himself among them, and Beaton, who tried really to anticipate. It must be said that he may have paid the penalty for over-anxiety at the start. He's in third place, and Pusey's at the back. And this really could cause a major upset, because Newcastle so strong a favourite. Unless Beaton can get up around the outside of the market, I have an awful lot of work to do. And Harrison is slowing, and this is terribly bad luck. Oh my word, Harrison is slowing there. That's allowed Beaton to go into the lead. Now what has happened to Derek Harrison? I think he too might be puncturing. And well, just when we thought that Newcastle may well have shot their bolt, and oh dear, Harrison is right at the back. It's certainly a puncture, and that is tragedy for Mildenhall, and an awfully good stroke of fortune for Newcastle. Beaton wins it. Second was Malarkey, third was Pusey, and Harrison is over the other side of the track. Beaton will be getting up to him in just a minute. There is Harrison, and that really is drama. In fact, it's black theatre. It's Greek tragedy for Mildenhall. They're still in with a shout, but effectively, surely now, Newcastle will anchor this national team fours title. Well, we've had some really good speedway, some unexpected happenings, some drama. In fact, all the ingredients of what speedway is all about in this country. It's first-class entertainment. We still might yet have a few chapters to add before the final curtain. Let's have a look at the lineup on the inside. Naylor, he's a spoiler in blue. Next to him, Rob Henry. Must win, he knows nothing less will do. Grid 3 has Emerson, he knows he must get a point, nothing less will do. And on the outside, Martin Dixon, and he's a body battler as well. So here we go for heat 8, and it looks like Henry is away. Henry leads it, although coming around the outside it is Dixon, and Dixon has gone clear of Henry. In third place it is Emerson, and well, Dixon from Middlesbrough, we might have predicted he could be the spoiler. And it could be the end of Mildenhall's challenge. Emerson is just hanging on in third place. He knows that will be enough. And Martin Dixon from National League champions Middlesbrough, the man who looks like having the last say in this national team fours. Emerson cruising in third place, and one thing he felt like he maybe get off the challenge. Rob Henry, who hit the front early on, could not withstand the outside challenge of Dixon, and so this national team fours that he thought would provide us with some interesting entertainment has done that, but at the last gasp there's a little bit of an anticlimax, with Wilcock taking the last heat to ensure that Mildenhall don't win and Newcastle do. But our final score in the National Team Championship, we look at it, and Newcastle are the winners on 17 points. Brave Mildenhall keeping the Anglian flag flying on 15. Middlesbrough always a threat on 13, and Rye House back on 3.
So our congratulations to Newcastle, the 1982 National League 4-team champions, and our commiserations to a very brave Mildenhall side who made them fight all the way. That's it. Good night from the Alwalton Stadium here at Peterborough.